What is up, nerds? This is Jerry from Them Nerds with Tony. We're here to do a little recap and review of the last three episodes of Hawkeye. This series has, feels like it just started yesterday, but it's wrapped up already. And I gotta say, it's probably one of the best they put out so far. What do you think, Tony?
100%. I feel like this was a show about a side character that felt like it was just a filler series, and it blew all those expectations out of the water. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was funny. I was left wanting more, and I'm really hoping. You mentioned that this was listed as the season finale, not the series finale.
Exactly.
Which we'll talk about what we want out of another season here shortly, but I definitely want more. I thought this was a great show. Good stuff. Yeah.
I think with the other series that we've watched, WandaVision, Falcon the Winter Soldier, Loki, the episodes always felt just a little bit too short. But actually, I feel like the shorter episodes actually worked with this series itself. And so, the last three episodes really was just a way to get us the antagonists brought in, and then also to go ahead and bring in some of the characters that we already know about into it, so that we got a little bit more of a backstory. Within the last three episodes, you got Yelena Belova brought in, and I actually feel that she was actually given a better story in these three episodes than she was given in a 2.5-hour movie in Black Widow.
100% agree. Her character became a lot more likable, a lot more relatable. Having the connection with Clint and Natasha butting up against the connection between Yelena and Natasha led to some really, really good stuff. And she's a character now. Black Widow was a good movie, but afterward I was like, do I really care that much if I ever see Yelena again? But after this series and what she did on this show, I really do hope that they bring her back, because I think there's a lot of story left to unfold with her.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, they go ahead and explain the idea of Maya's father being killed off and by Ronan. We see that Ronan plays a big factor in episode 3 and 4. I'm sorry, 4 and 5. And, basically kind of explains that there's some double crossing going on in her own team, that's the reason why he even showed up in the first place. And that's something she has to, come to grips with, that maybe this family that she thinks she had after her father was killed off, maybe be, setting her up to take care of their dirty work, we're actually stabbing her in her own back. Right. Which is, kind of ironic for a character whose whole point is that she's supposed to be observing everything and understanding what's going on. And that's what makes her so powerful, is that she's always watching everybody. So she's always has one step ahead of them. And then we see, the clown, which I actually feel like maybe I'm hoping that this wasn't the end of his character arc. I am not even going to try to attempt a name. I don't try to say foreign names. It's just not my thing. But because his character was a lot more dark in the series itself, and they kind of give him I want to say, obviously there was a little bit of dark stuff there, especially towards episode 6, but he was much more made, I feel like, a little bit like a fool in this thing. He's kind of the butt of every Hawkeye joke.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And you mentioned a lot of the buildup here being toward the antagonist being revealed, the big reveal.
The uncle.
It's uncle. And man, we were not disappointed. By the way, if you're watching this and you still haven't watched this series, spoilers.
Yeah. Why aren't you YouTube? Don't be on YouTube.
Yeah. Why are you here? Go to Disney Plus, watch the show, then come here.
We were nice enough to wait a few days, hoping that you get this done. I mean, what else you got to do? By now, you should be all caught up. Let's do this.
Very true.
We branched out of fighting in hallways, fighting on buses. Now we're fighting on rooftops. And it actually felt very similar to me to the Netflix series, the battles that they have, very ground level, in the gritty areas of New York. And we get to finally see Yelena show up in her comic accurate spy outfit and put on one of the best fight scenes between 4 characters. That really just pays off. And it's one of those things, you leave at the very end of it. And I've told, me and Tony were talking about this for several episodes. I was fully expecting to be disappointed by what we were hoping we were going to see. There was no disappointment in this series, and that fight is what kicked it off. We, seeing Yelena just, going full Black Widow was amazing.
Right. And for those of you who are not caught up and you're still watching this for whatever reason, the big reveal, the thing that we were hoping for, but we were worried we were going to be disappointed by, is the second bald white guy on this video, and that's the guy in Jerry's background, Vincent D'Onofrio's Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. And it did not disappoint. He showed up at the end, and you mentioned we branched out from the hallway fight scenes. My favorite fight scene was not the rooftop fight scene. My favorite fight scene was Kingpin just beating the tar out of Kate Bishop in a toy store.
Yes. What I enjoy about this, and this is something that a lot of people that I've read on the internet did not enjoy about this, was that they liked the grittiness of what Kingpin was on Netflix. But what people have to realize is Kingpin on Netflix was Marvel Knights. That was a comic series that was completely written for adults. Yes. That's what you got. That is not what
fantastic, by the way.
Oh yeah, so he's amazing in it. And it shows you how good of an actor he is, because the Kingpin that we actually see in the comic books for the first 40 years that he was out before he was completely revised as a Daredevil villain was this kind of goofy mob boss. And that's what we kind of got in this thing. He's still intimidating. He's still, can just, like you said, beat the crap out of Kate Bishop and taking hits by cars and getting blown up, and he's perfectly fine. But you still see that there's a little bit of darkness there, but it's a little bit more of a very gimmicky kind of mob boss rather than this idea of an angry mob boss that we had in Daredevil.
Yeah. His the comic book Kingpin that I've always kind of like pictured in my head, which I think is very close to what we got on this series, is almost like a mix between like a caricature of the Godfather and Juggernaut.
Yes.
Like he's a big, tough, unstoppable guy, but in the grand scheme of things, he's like, let me make you an offer you can't, whereas in the Netflix Daredevil series, he was just a very like dark, brooding, straight up like bad dude. And I think we're going to get kind of a mix here, but I do think they're going to lean a little more heavily on his comic book roots, which is great.
Also, one thing that you have to in order to be a Kingpin is organized crime. In Daredevil, Kingpin played a role in organized crime, but you didn't see his lackeys that were going out there and getting their butts beat to try to make him his money. This is what you're seeing. You're seeing a build up of a street level mob boss. Okay. When you're playing Street Fighter or you're playing any kind of arcade game, you got a bunch of low level bosses you ever have to get to before you get to the Kingpin of the characters. You know what I mean? And that's what they're giving you right now.
Yeah. Foot soldiers, man.
Yeah. And this is what the MCU has been missing this whole time, is this idea that we're building up the villains. Thanos is probably the only one that really got that. But the idea for any kind of comic book is you beat the villain, but they don't go away. And that's what you're doing right now with these characters now that you're building up.
How many times? I mean, when we talk about some of these long-standing characters, some of these characters have been around, 50 plus years. We're talking about like Doctor Doom, we're talking about the Kingpin, Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus. They keep coming back, and they are, revised and renewed, and they're updated, and, maybe their origin is tweaked a bit, in different series by different writers. Or maybe, like in the case of Dr. Doom, maybe he goes over to the side of good for a while and comes back. And, like villains in comic books are just as permanent as heroes. And that's something that the MCU has, in my opinion, failed miserably at, because the heroes were very, up until the end of the Infinity Saga, they were pretty impenetrable, but their villains, they were either one and done, or they ended up, like in Loki's case, being more of an anti-hero than a villain.
Yeah.
And like you said, Thanos is really the only one who kind of stuck around for a while and was a straight up villain.
Yeah, and we already know Thanos was right. So, this series also showed us that there's a watch that everybody's fighting over. Nobody really understands the reason why the watch is so important. I obviously at the end of it, there's a payoff, but I don't know why, if they ever really explained thoroughly the reason why people were trying to get their hands on the watch, like why so many people were aware of why this watch would be important. I don't know if that was ever really explained.
Right.
But then you also had, Maya's, revenge, and her revenge towards Ronan gave a big play into it. Then her final curtain call on the series in episode 6, we actually get to see her get to give retribution to Kingpin, and leaving a lot of us in the dark of wondering whether or not we'll ever see Kingpin even show back up on the small screen.
Right. And I feel like it was done off screen for a reason.
Uh-huh.
And there's no way, Kevin Feige and his team are some of the smartest creative minds in the entertainment industry today. The frothy fervor with which people like us wanted Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin back on screen is not going to be rewarded by a 1-episode return.
Yep. They clearly built it up, hitting him with a car, blowing him up with arrows, shooting him with arrow, where this basically bounces right off of him. It's showing him in the comic books, basically Kingpin is so much, he's more muscle than he is anything else. And his muscle mass is so dense that he's basically indestructible. And that's what they're kind of, giving you that idea of that's what he is, without actually acknowledging that that's what he is. Right. At this point, really, this is the closest we've gotten to a mutant, which he's not in the comic books, but that's really what it comes down. He's almost like a Wolverine. But right. Anybody who's actually read the comic books will know that this is a storyline that comes directly from the comic books. And so the story isn't over.
Right. And it's funny, you mentioned that in the comic books, what did this injury do to Kingpin in the comics?
Ends up blinding him. So he has kind of a understanding of Daredevil.
Right. And I think that's a really interesting parallel, given the fact that his counterpart here at the end of Hawkeye is someone who is hard of hearing. Mm-hmm. And then he has to deal with being, if they follow the comic books, being visually impaired. And then, of course, the parallel with Daredevil, who we know is back in the fold. So I feel like he's definitely going to make an appearance when the Echo standalone series comes to Disney.
Absolutely.
And I think we're going to definitely see him on the big screen as well. Let's run down some of our highlights, some of our maybe lowlights, if there were any for you, and kind of our wish list for the future going from this series onward, whether it's in season 2 or whether it's in a different series or film.
Yeah. My highlight was, I think that they did an excellent job bringing Kate Bishop into the series. I think that I'm not the biggest Seinfeld fan. Like, I don't think she's usually that great of an actress, but I think she did an excellent job in this series. I think they did a great job writing her in, where you almost feel like you've watched her several times before you ever even saw this. Right. The story I thought was well done. I felt like the pace was pretty good through all 6 episodes. It wasn't a series I felt like hurt from having a shorter run.
No, I felt like it was appropriately laid out and paced.
Yeah. And Kingpin.
Yeah. Just if I can just go back a second on your Kate Bishop thing. The vibe that I got from Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop reminded me a lot of Owen Wilson as Mobius in Loki. Owen Wilson is he's not like a Leonardo DiCaprio, Jack Nicholson level, like I can act and do all these different things. You know what I mean? Yeah. But they cast him perfectly. And that's where I think they hit the nail on the head with Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop.
Yeah.
She may not be the world's greatest actress, but I think she's a really great Kate Bishop.
Yeah.
So
I think that what we've learned, especially, is that from this series, and I thought they did well, is that the kids factor is what changes these superheroes. So Hawkeye has this fatherly kind of figure mentality because of his own children, similar to what happened with Iron Man. Iron Man was just out there ready to blow everything up and have a good time and fight aliens and everything else, and then he ends up having his daughter, and it changes his idea of, am I willing to risk it all? And the same thing that's going on with him. Am I willing to risk myself, and not only that, but risk a child while I do it? And
Right.
so I think that they did that well also.
Yeah. So high points for me. The Kingpin. I mean, we talked on this show before, probably a couple of years ago, about the just pure and utter quality of the villains on those Netflix series.
Mm-hmm.
From Cottonmouth to Purple Man to especially Kingpin.
Yep.
And I feel like bringing him back was perfect. And I'm glad he's back, and I'm very excited for what's going to happen with him in the future. The reveal you mentioned with the watch, you and I had sort of talked about what the scuttlebutt was on the internet about that watch and about what it might mean. The big reveal, it belonged to Clint's wife, who happened to be Agent 19. Why is that significant, Gerald?
That's old Mockingbird.
It's Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Clint's wife, just like in the comic books, is Mockingbird. Now, we already had Mockingbird in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with Adrienne Palicki, who has said she's not likely to reprise the role. So do we have a Mockingbird in the MCU now? Is that fair to say?
I would hope so. I think that it's actually a very smart way of them doing it. This idea that she's not an active agent, but she still has the ability, or is she not an active agent? She's just not a active agent we've seen on screen, but from what we learned in this series is she has just as much capabilities of finding out anything you need to know from her little country house as they do on some aircraft or helicarrier over in New York.
Yeah, she's obviously got her finger on the pulse. She's able to feed Clint intel. So she's got her hands in everything there. I tell you, the surprise high point for me in this one was the character in the comic books, Jacques Duquesne, in this series, Jack Duquesne, who we were led to believe was going to be a complete, villain. And of course, for those of you that don't know, the character Jack Duquesne in this series, Kate's mom's boyfriend in the comic books, is a character known as the Swordsman. Dude likes swords. So one of my favorite parts was when he went full like Zorro in that finale, because in the comic books, he's always been kind of a back and forth character. He was a villain, and he was an Avenger for a while. And in the grand scheme of things, he always sort of seemed like somebody who wanted to do the right thing, even if he had some character flaws. And I felt like his explosion out onto the street with his sword and stuff was so great. It was like such a surprise, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. One honorable mention for me would be the tracksuit Mafia. I thought that that their whole use of bro and these little stories like they have with Kate speaking to one of them about not going to go see, I think it was Nickelback, right, or something, or it was like
his girlfriend wanted to go see Imagine Dragons.
Yeah.
I don't want to see Imagine Dragons, bro.
You know what I mean? Like right before they get into that final battle, he's like, "Oh, what you said works." I mean, it's so funny. So I think that was one of them. What was your low point?
The only part for me that even stood out in any way as negative, and the only reason why I think it stands out as negative, is because I know that it's going to be kind of a linchpin for something in the future, is the character of Echo. I feel like I don't believe it. I don't believe her. And maybe she didn't get the amount of screen time, and but I don't know. I don't know if she as an actress and she as a character is strong enough to carry a series. Maybe they won't make her carry the series. Maybe they're going to let somebody like Vincent D'Onofrio carry the series, and she's just going to kind of be there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
or Charlie Cox. I agree. I think that I don't think she was bad. I just don't feel like I got enough from her in the series to think to myself, like, how did you decide that this is going to be a spinoff?
Yeah.
I mean, Pizza Dog had more screen time.
Pizza Dog was a stud.
Yeah. And so, like, for a person who's going to carry a whole series on their own, she probably only had about 20 minutes of screen time throughout 6 episodes. And some of the best fight scenes that they had, but still, I mean, and it's a lot to put on somebody who's, obviously hearing impaired, and you're going to have to convey a lot, and you're only giving them, 30 seconds on the screen. I don't know if there was a connection here. I'm definitely not saying that I'm not sold on the idea. I just think to myself that it's one of those series that's going to have to really surprise me when I watch it.
Right. I do think it's going to be, one of the things we talked about before is the MCU really focusing on the idea of representation. And, it's like we've got Sam Wilson as Captain America. Shang-Chi is probably the most popular hero in the MCU right now. And the idea of having a Native American hearing impaired, and she's also an partial amputee.
Yeah.
Like, she's definitely like somebody for a lot of viewers to latch onto and look up to, which I think is awesome. I'm not sure the character is going to be enough, but I have a lot of faith in
I just think
Marvel.
I think the failure was that character deserved more screen time to explain what was going on in her story, but that's why they're giving her more screen time, but with her own series. I think my downfall would be the only thing that I thought was odd about the whole thing was they played that part with Clint down there, and he's looking over the plaque speaking to Natasha when he takes his hearing aid out, and obviously right above that is where the Avengers Tower would be normally. And so I was hoping that we were going to get to see what's going on, hopefully like maybe Fisk's name was going to be on there or give us some kind of hint of where we're going in the future. But they actually showed in episode 6, the skyline view where you should see the Avengers Tower, and there was just no Avengers Tower there.
Which made me think that was intentional.
I'm thinking like, they got a really good deal on some old B-roll. I don't know, but I felt like there's something else going there. And I think that people were waiting for that when they acknowledged it, and Kate says, "Oh, do we keep this stuff in the Stark Tower?" And then Agent 19's even talking about the watch was there. I assumed that we were going to get a little something, and that's going to be my only thing, and that's not much to complain about.
No, at least they didn't use B footage that still had the Twin Towers.
Yeah, that's true. That would have been poor taste. Poor taste.
Yeah, not like that nightlight that I bought a few years ago that still had them on the packaging. Come on, guys. All right. So what's your wish list going forward? Whether it's in season 2 of Hawkeye or in other properties that are branching off of Hawkeye.
Okay, so this is going to be my one thing that I think should happen, especially since we know it's going to be a season 2 thing. My 2 things, actually, let's say. Either you give us a season 2, which consists of giving us a backstory of Kate or of Clint and Laura as Mockingbird and Hawkeye. Or what I really would love to hope is that you spent a long time building up this idea that we're building an Avengers Academy. There's nothing better than to have these 2 people who are agents. They need to start building back up the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., in my opinion. Yes. It's a smart idea to go ahead. You got Nick Fury up in space working on S.W.O.R.D. Have these people down here start working on some new agents. I think that is one thing the MCU has really let themselves down. It's not much of an agency when we only know 3 characters, whoever been, agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So give us that and let them be in charge of the Young Avengers.
Yes. That is my only item on my wish list, is that we get to see them, Clint, and I keep wanting to say Bobby because Mockingbird is
and is she Bobby?
Huh?
Is she Bobby? Did she change her whole name? I mean, there's a good chance that she was put into some kind of witness protection. You know what I mean?
Right. I know. Well, at any rate, Hawkeye and Mockingbird. I would love to see. I mean, I've been such a Young Avengers stan on this show for so long, talking about all the different characters that we have coming up. I mean, we see, we've seen a glimpse of Patriot in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We know Cassie Lang is going to be around. Now we've got Kate Bishop.
Wiccan, Speed.
Right. Yeah. The twins. There's just so many pieces that could fall into place to make that Young Avengers team. And the perfect option would be to have Clint and Laura training them. And, I'd also like to see Kingpin come back for a season 2. And it'd be a really good kind of test for these Young Avengers to kind of like try to deal with this, massive criminal organization that Fisk has his hands in.
Yep, exactly.
I don't know, man. What's next on the Disney Plus slate?
I don't think they've even made their announcement of what's going to come up next. We know we got Moon Knight, we have She-Hulk, we have Miss Marvel,
Armor Wars.
Armor Wars should be coming out. Secret Wars Secret Invasions being filmed. I mean, we have so much on the plate. It's just like we'll be talking about these shows now for the next 2 or 3 years, and then we'll be surprised by the new slate they're going to give us.
Right. Next big thing on Disney Plus for me has nothing to do with Marvel, and that is the Book of Boba Fett.
Yes.
I just can't wait. I love me some Mandalorians.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, hey, anything else, Jerry, for the good of the order tonight?
No, I think that you've summed it up. And all I can say is if you haven't watched it yet, you made it this far, go ahead and start watching it so that, you understand what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And if you have an opportunity, watch the rest of those Disney Plus Marvel shows because they were all so good. And they're all really laying the groundwork for what's going to be happening in the MCU for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
So check them out. And if you have time, go ahead and click on that subscribe button down there. Give us a like, share us with your friends. It's like, hey, there's these 2 super handsome dudes talking about nerd stuff, just like.
Yeah. And then there's also us.
And then, when you're done watching them, you can watch us. All right. Hey, just like the background behind me indicates, it is Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Go hug your family. Give them a call. Be good. Be good to each other.
Stay nerdy.
We love you, folks. Bye.
Later.